When the dawn touches Africa, it's as if the world is newly wakened. Today, the people of Kamwenge village in Uganda celebrate renewal. On the anniversary of their first stable, independent government, they welcome a new beginning, a chance for peace and for progress. There is a story in Africa that is not what we usually read in the headlines: famine, war, and other disasters. The real story of Africa is about people working to overcome great difficulties, people changing their lives, building their future. A groundswell of action at all levels of society, transforming the continent. The changes are both stunning and subtle when seen through new eyes and heard in the words of the Africans themselves. On a small family farm, every morning is a new beginning. The farmers are Joy and David Wakesa.
We have different sounds in the morning here of the animals, of course the milking animals expecting the younger ones to come, and at the same time the birds, the chicken. I think you can hear even the sounds now. The chicken sounds are very clean and they wake you up. One feels is happy because when you hear the sounds of your own pasture and the birds, you feel you have something around you and you have security, economic security.
Economic security. For most Africans, economic security has been hard to come by. The resources of Africa are enormous. Africa spreads over 1/5 of the land surface of our planet. It has dense forests, abundant minerals, a generous supply of water, sun, and rich soil, fertile land for farming. Above all, it has its people, a vast potential. There is the land and there are the people. They are inseparable. Together they are Africa. Africa's people have always faced great struggles and harsh challenges. But now Africans can see a future of promise, of possibility. For Africa, this new vision is generating new action. Africa today is on the move.
Africa in the future is going to provide a lead in many, many areas. I think people are going to be coming to Africa for food. It's the bread basket, as it were, of the world in the future.
It is a real potential that Uganda can feed itself, and not in the very far future, Uganda could be feeding not only itself, but also neighboring countries and other countries outside the continent.
Africa today faces conditions confronted not long ago by the United States, Russia, and other developed nations. Life expectancy is low. Children still die of preventable diseases. Sanitation is primitive. Roads, transportation, and communication are minimal. Basic literacy is not universal. Women are not yet full participants in public life. Add to that a vulnerability to drought and political instability, and you have hunger, chronic hunger as a daily reality for millions. While not visible or dramatic like famine, this quiet devastation accounts for fully 90% of hunger's death toll. But Africa is facing these challenges. The answers, Africans think, lie within their own power. Hard work, determination, new skills, self-help. The power to bring change, dramatic change. It is a time for discovery. This film is a part of that discovery. The filming itself had its own drama. It was a partnership unthinkable only a short time ago, a cooperative venture between Soviets, Americans, and Ugandans. No longer preoccupied only with each other, the two superpowers might begin to see the world in a different light, and Africa might at last take its proper place on the global stage. One Russian filmmaker, one American, come to Africa to learn from Africans.
What is it? What is the old way of doing it? What is that? Which one? This over here.
That is grass.
How long does that last?
Хороший is good, very good. Хороший is good, and очень хороший is very good. What about не надо? Nothing.
The filming was an attempt to break through the stereotypes and get to the heart of Africa's new time of change. Change in a landscape that is timeless, beautiful, filled with movement and grace. Uganda is a microcosm of Africa, facing many of the same problems, the same challenges as the rest of this vast continent. And Uganda, along with the rest of Africa, is ready for new relationships, new partnerships.
We don't want to see Africa as a scene of East-West confrontation, but as a field of international cooperation which is aimed to overcome those Africa's burning problems.
It must be a realization in the outside world, certainly in my own country, that Africa is not a monolith. It's over 50-some countries, very divergent cultures, many different cultures, different languages, different ethnic backgrounds, a very diverse, if you will, continent. By the same token, people are very much similar. They want a better way of life, better economic standards for their children, a decent education.
If you ask the people how they would like to see their life be, many people have experienced they would like to be healthy, they want to sleep in good houses, they want to drink clean water. Now the idea of drinking clean water or being healthy or good nutrition motivates them to take action in favor of that vision. My biggest dream is to have a good life with my people. Because everything we do, we don't do everything to get rich, to do what, but to have a good life. That is the only big dream.
At the moment, there is a lot of improvement in our country. Because in the past, most of the things were destroyed. Now we are rebuilding the nation. The roads are being repaired. Hospitals which have not been working since the war time or before the war, now they are trying to repair them. There is something being done. There is a positive direction which we are taking at the moment. That's what I believe.
Uganda's resources, human and natural, place it squarely in the African mainstream. Uganda sits on the equator, a small nation in the middle of a continent 4 times the size of the United States, with a population as great as the United States and the USSR combined. 1 human being in every 8 is African. Nearly all of Africa was colonized by the European powers, Uganda by the British. English, spoken by many Ugandans as a third or fourth language, is a legacy of that time.
Good. Keep that clap. Thank you.
Because of its location and its elevation on a great plateau, Uganda enjoys two seasons, wet and dry. In the center of the country, vegetation is rich, and when the rains come, crops grow easily. The northern and eastern parts of Uganda are much drier. Here, agriculture is limited, and the semi-nomadic population engages mostly in cattle keeping. Like the rest of Africa, Uganda depends on agriculture. Here, nearly everyone is a farmer, working daily in the fields or shambas. Uganda's hills have long been covered with plantations of tea, coffee, and cotton, cash crops for export to Europe and elsewhere. But survival depends on the food the people can grow for themselves. For many, these plantains, known as matoke, are a main staple of life. Ugandans also grow maize or corn, along with yams, beans, peanuts, and cassava. Pineapples and other fruits grow well in the subtropical climate. Each family tries to be self-reliant. Even when they can get to markets, variety has always been limited, money scarce. Selling their own produce, fruits, grain, eggs, nuts, can help provide income, but prices are low and transportation is difficult. Uganda's population is around 16 million. Of these, 95% live in the countryside. Throughout Africa, life is still largely rural, though cities are growing centers of communication and commerce. Uganda's capital is Kampala, a city of well over 300,000 people. Although Uganda is far from overcrowded, its population is growing very fast. At this rate of expansion, the number of people will double in less than 20 years. Yet while many children are being born, many are dying. Uganda's infant mortality rate, the number of children who don't live to their first birthday, is more than 11 times that of the USA. And there is only one doctor for every 27,000 people, compared to one for every 250 people in the USSR. Of all the challenges facing Uganda's people, staying alive, staying healthy is the first. Most Africans will not live much beyond age 50. Africa is a continent of villages, 50 nations, hundreds of languages. The people are scattered in small, close-knit groups, with communication and movement often limited to the distance you can walk. African people are still pedestrians. African villages are built by hand from local materials. Electricity, telephones, roads, sanitation services are goals for the future. Most African farmers depend completely on the rain. With limited storage and irrigation, without new strains of seed that can withstand drought conditions, Africa remains vulnerable to the unpredictable accidents of weather. No rain, no food. While most of Africa grows enough food, chronic hunger persists, invisible to the outsider. Common colds, diarrhea, waterborne diseases, even measles are major killers in the absence of good diet and basic health care.
And you said you had 10 children?
Yes.
Have any children died?
Long ago, two children died.
2 of your children died?
Yes.
From what causes?
It was measles.
Both from measles?
One was from measles, another one, as I had not gone in the programs of this immunization, I never understood which disease killed the child. But the one I knew correctly was measles.
Our dear visitors, welcome, we are happy to see you. Everybody's happy today to receive you here.
Age-old Africa, rich in history and heritage, perhaps even the birthplace of humanity. But the nations that comprise it are shining new. Like nearly all African countries, Uganda has been a nation, independent and self-governing, for little more than a generation. At independence in 1962, the mood was joyful. Freedom intoxicates. A new government elected by a free people. A new age of democracy beginning. The first goal was political liberation, creating a mature, stable, self-governing society out of the ashes of colonialism. But throughout history, nation building has been a long, painful, and often bloody process. For more than 20 years, the emerging Ugandan nation grappled with the tyranny of men such as Milton Obote and Idi Amin. Economic and social chaos, war, and civil strife made life in Uganda a long nightmare. With the coming to power of President Yoweri Museveni in 1986, a road to political stability opened. Having crossed a first threshold of political liberation, Ugandans now turn to the struggle for economic liberation. Now they face the task of building the economic and social systems that will ensure their society's future.
Now you have heard about 30 years of independence. You know, we need to move. In this phase, the African is in charge, is growingly, is increasingly controlling his own destiny. Independence ushered in a beginning of this. It didn't quite mean it completely, but now we are getting more and more to the full realization of what it means to be in charge of our own affairs. So there is nobody else who is going to be in charge of us. It is ourselves.
My farm is my whole life as a person, and this is the only way I can live. And it's the only way I can live and pass over to my children. And it's the only way I can support the family, support my community and the nation through my production.
For Uganda, and for all of Africa, the future is being forged on the small family farm.
The small farmer is very, very important for our economy because he's very resilient. And his interest is closely tied with the interest of the enterprise of his farm. That's how our economy has survived.
Farming in Africa is a family affair, but it is the women who grow 80% of the food. Joy Wakesa has first-hand experience.
The women always bring up their children. They cook the food and prepare the food, anything to do with food. Men are concerned mostly with economic status. They handle money, they erect buildings.
In 1964, Joy and David Wakesa moved to western Uganda, to the village of Nyakehama, where large tracts of farmland were available to settlers. David Wakesa is a leader in the community. He is 43 years old and the owner of 30 acres of farmland. On it, he and Joy support their 10 children. In the African way, the Wakeses live as an extended family. David's mother lives with them, respected as an elder. His 4 brothers and their families also live here, dependent on him and on each other. All told, this farm supports some 35 people.
Each family tries to be self-sufficient. You grow your own food. You eat your own food instead of going to the market. Because people don't have the liquid cash, they don't have the money. What they have to do is to feed their families first.
The Wakeses eat only what they grow, a diet high in starch, low in protein and other nutrients.
Even if Uganda as a nation has enough food, that is no guarantee that every individual home has got enough food and in a balanced diet.
This is the problem we have, and that's why we have these groups of women trying to learn the new methods of cooking, the mixing of various items of food to provide better meals for the growth of their children.
Feeding and caring for 10 children is more than a full-time job for anyone, especially if you have to grow all the food yourself.
You find the farmer, a typical farmer, is really hard working. For example, the woman wakes up before 6, prepares breakfast, he goes to the garden, he fetches firewood, he brings water. So about 16 hours, the typical farmer is busy. He relies on family labor for production.
An investment in children pays tangible dividends in the fields. Energy and perseverance are more valuable than skill, and numbers are an advantage. So the large families now common in Africa are beneficial. The bigger and more diligent the workforce, the greater the amount of production. And that means more economic security for today and for old age. Everyone has obligations, an older sister for a younger brother. In time, the younger brother will inherit his own obligations, becoming a part of a community in which everyone works. Everyone contributes. Peter Kaleo is 38. He has 8 surviving children. The farm is a family operation. Everyone lends a hand. They grow a variety of crops. Sugarcane is crushed to produce sweet nectar. Peanuts are a source of protein. Even the very youngest are active participants, almost as soon as they can walk. Though children must spend time working on the farm, their parents want them to be educated.
Some 5 years ago, I sat down with the community here, brought the idea that it was necessary to put up a school, and through concerted efforts, people came forward and put up that small school, grass school you saw down there. And this time we are proud of it because our children go to the nearest school, they come home at the right time, we need them and we supervise the school, and we feel proud. So here we much emphasize agriculture, we emphasize health, we emphasize cattle keeping because it's a way of life from the homes of the children, and we emphasize things that touch children firsthand in their lifetime.
But education is not only for children. A radio broadcast delivers a weekly correspondence course on new farming methods. It is a voice of change.
We realize that one of the biggest problems most farmers do have is lack of information, let's say concerning better seeds, better methods of farming. We have programs both on radio and on television whereby we try to reach those farmers whom we can reach with these messages.
Information, simple and effective methods of production and of storage. Mixing ash with beans helps Peter keep them dry and pest-free.
The character of a farmer who aspire for development and do good work should be ready to learn new techniques, should be ready to cooperate, should be ready to diversify, should be ready for change, should be ready to accept advice, and should be ready to look for advice to be a better farmer.
And this means all farmers, men and women.
The biggest number of farmers are actually women. So Uganda being an agricultural country and the economy of Uganda depending on agriculture, can be summed up that the economy of Uganda depends mostly on women.
The women's toil has not earned them their freedom. The storyteller passes on a traditional tale. This woman is bad luck. She must be rejected and replaced by another. African women are still subservient. They work, but men control the land and the money and make the decisions. Joy Wakesa's situation is typical. While David clears and plows the land, she is responsible for what the land produces, beginning by planting and tending the crops, harvesting, processing, and finally cooking and serving each and every meal. In many parts of Africa, this means a daily search for water and firewood that can take hours. Needless to say, Joy also bears and nurtures the children, while at the same time managing the entire household. Joy Wakesa has borne 10 children, and more than anyone else has ensured that all of them have survived. Throughout Africa, it is the women who hold life together, often with little real support from their men.
What happens is that most of the land in Uganda is owned by the men, but most of the agriculture in Uganda is done by the women. So here we have a situation whereby somebody who is doing the work does not actually own the asset. This has got its own negative effects. For example, you find that sometimes a woman will do a very good job, produce a lot of agriculture crops, but then when it comes to marketing, the man may actually demand to be the one to go and market. And when they market, they actually do not give the money back to the women. They don't have a say in the marketing of their crops. This is very, very discouraging to them because they quite often get cheated.
But for some, at least, there is a vision of change.
My dream is to provide enough opportunity for women emancipation, in that women are the backbone of our families in Africa, and so they need to be given all the chances to receive sufficient education. You see, women have never had the chance to involve themselves in economic participation, I mean in power decision, deciding on the economic production. All along in the African society, women have been used as supporters of the men, and this is now an outdated way of thinking.
For now, vision is not enough to put food in children's mouths. The ancient backbreaking waves fill Joy Wakesa's long, exhausting day. Each day, every day. The old ways are not just hard on women, they are holding all of Africa back. As women become full partners, Africa will be transformed from the inside out. If this is to happen, women must end their isolation, beginning by learning to read.
Today, women must reach for emancipation, for freedom, for knowledge, so we can participate fully in the struggle for development. Women must have the chance to educate themselves. Then we will stand with our men, sharing in all responsibilities.
While for much of Africa there are still no classes like this one, Joy Wakesa's pioneering efforts point to the future.
Even if most of us had been left behind, we really have a lot which we can contribute to our governments. And for as long as women are ignored as a source of development, those African countries which are ignoring their women will remain behind and developed, because there is no way you can develop a country with just 1/2 of the population.
Africans are taking control of their own affairs. In thousands of villages all over Africa, farmers identify problems, discuss solutions, and plan action.
We know what we are doing and we know what we are supposed to do. We are taking on all the activities required for our independence, and that we are able to handle all aspects of development in our own hands. We are able to plan on our own. We are able to discuss and see and focus our direction.
No, it's not good to live like your grandfather lived. You have problems, you don't have water in your houses, you don't have roads to your shambas because you're of backwardness in science and technology. We must solve this. Even when we import in the short run, in the medium term, in the long run, we must have our own capacity integrated within our own community to solve this problem.
Peter Kaleo was one of the first members of a local farmers association formed for self-help. They try to find new approaches to old problems, keeping the goals in mind and in sight at all times. Adequate nutrition, effective sanitation, good education.
The community here, it helps itself by doing what we are learning, mostly health, immunization, and nutrition and sanitation. But from one step, you can make even millions of steps.
Small innovations can yield far-reaching results. Hoeing by hand gives way to plowing with oxen.
An ox plow does much more work than the manual hoe. So when we bought the bulls and trained them, my income, it has increased by 50%.
quite a number of rural farmers who have until recently been living as subsistence farmers have actually managed to transform themselves from subsistence farmers to commercial farmers, to such an extent that they have actually managed to produce a great surplus on these same small farms. So the storage of this surplus and marketing of the same is actually now a problem. But as we in government say, it's a good problem for us.
With surpluses becoming more of a reality for African farmers, so is the possibility of commerce. But surpluses are useless if the food cannot be brought to market. The road linking Nyakahama village to the rest of the world, to markets, was completely impassable for most of the year, until David and his neighbors organized to improve it. The government finally sent a road grading machine, but there was no money for fuel. David and other farmers got together to raise the necessary money to keep the tank filled. Soon everybody could see benefits. Isolation ended. Healthcare and education became more accessible. Commerce began to flow. People could buy the things they needed. David Wakesa is part of the Association of Local Farmers which organizes this market. One of his duties is to collect fees from people offering goods for sale. Without the market, people would have to travel all the way to the city, a trip which can take days. Or they would simply do without. It's a social occasion. And there's money to be made. Markets like this one can be seen throughout Africa. And while the road from Nyakahama was a major accomplishment, yielding many benefits for the local economy, commerce isn't the only thing that matters. Throughout Africa, farmers who work the land are concerned with its health. They know their livelihoods depend on increasing productivity without exhausting the land.
This is a problem of the environment because we have been cutting some trees aimlessly. As you see, we have cleared some of these farms. So it will be the cause that as we reduce the big trees around, then we make it very difficult for the weather to hold the clouds and give us enough rain.
Water is the most valuable of all natural commodities. Only 1 African in 4 has access to clean water. Waterborne diseases such as diarrhea and parasites are Africa's biggest killers. Water, enough clean water, means survival. Every drop the village uses is brought by hand, often from miles away. It is the women and children who do the carrying. Again, small steps can mean dramatic changes. What used to be a natural pool, a source of disease and infection, is now a protected supply of pure, clean water. The project was sponsored by the Uganda Rural Development and Training Program, which with the help of UNICEF provided materials and technical expertise. But the people who made it happen are those who live here.
It's one of my dreams that I should teach my people about water. I try to teach them the use of water. They know even they only know that water, any water is good, but now they are starting to understand why water is needed and why good water is needed.
And clean water offers other opportunities. The water spilling from the spring provides a home for a new and renewable source of protein. Peter has added fish farming to his repertoire. While unfamiliar to the local population, these protein-rich tilapia are a welcome addition to the family table and to the market. They represent another real and sustainable step forward.
If someone asks you for a fish and you give him a fish, that does not help him, because tomorrow he's going to look for another fish. But if you give him a net, then he can go on the lake and get his own fish.
On the water or on the land, the goal is the same: a healthy life, a productive life. If African societies are to break with the hand-to-mouth existence of the past, all the supporting structures for a working economy must be in place. Africans are already producing food to feed themselves, and now they produce for the marketplace as well.
The Ugandans are responding to our call to produce for the market. Previously, producing for the market was very restricted. It was restricted only to crops needed by Europe, to coffee, cotton, tobacco, tea. But now we have taught them that you can produce maize for the market, you can produce beans for the market, you can produce oil seeds for the market.
Like farmers around the world, Ugandans need to know that they will be able to sell what they produce at a fair price. But even before that, they must have access to the raw materials. They must have the land, the seeds to plant it, the tools to work it. To get these things and to upgrade farming technology, they need capital. They need to be able to borrow money at affordable interest rates.
In Uganda, we have got plenty of good land. We have got the labor, the willing labor for that matter, but it's the capital which is a problem. We can never have enough money to lend these farmers so that they can improve their production. And because we do not have enough money, we have a problem getting farmers to use better farming implements. We have a problem getting them to build better stores for better storage and handling of crops. So this business of credit for agriculture, right from agriculture production, handling to marketing, is actually a big challenge. And the day we solve that, I'm sure we shall have solved one of the biggest problems in Uganda.
African governments know that they must provide a political, social, and economic environment that allows people to produce, enables them to build a secure future. One element of this job is to provide the basic infrastructure of a modern society, the network of roads, transportation, and communication systems needed to carry people, goods, services, information, the lifelines of today's world, the foundation on which to build.
Because the government has got a crucial role, infrastructure can only be developed by government. It cannot be developed by private people, even if they want to, they don't have the means.
For African people and African governments, the first step is to see that basic human needs are met. Access to health care, adequate nutrition and nutrition education, clean water, and sanitation. Africans also know the critical importance of education. The children have always been Africa's insurance against old age, disaster, an uncertain future. Now they are also the bringers of light and hope. An enormous change has entered Uganda's classrooms. Young girls are going to school, formerly the exclusive province of boys. Bringing young women into the mainstream of society will transform the face of Africa.
If the emancipation of women in Africa continues with this strength, then the children, the young generation, will see a better tomorrow.
But education is not just reading, writing, and arithmetic. It is skills, practical skills for life and work.
Well, we need education, of course. And education must be of that type which will be creative education, mainly in vocation training, because we have all the natural resources. And without vocation training, then you can't exploit what you should get for the people.
Uganda's investment in education is an investment in people, in sustainable economic growth, in self-reliance. Self-reliance at the village level, at the national level, and at the continental level. African nations are mostly very small, with little leverage in the global marketplace. Like individual African farmers, the nations know they must learn to work together, stand together, trade together. And with a single interwoven global economy emerging everywhere, they know they have much to do.
African states must develop relations among themselves. We must build our own internal capacities in food supply, in solving our own local problems, fighting disease, managing conflicts. We must build a continental economy. We must build a continental system.
The first role is for Africa to solve its own problems first, so that it becomes a valuable partner in peaceful exchange of goods and services. Now, then after that, the next most important thing is find a way of transferring management and technical skills to Africa on a sustainable scale, on a sustainable basis. I would prefer if this was through trade rather than through aid.
Few people inside Africa or outside it think that aid is the answer. Although government-sponsored and private aid does have a role to play in responding to emergencies and encouraging development, the international community has other tasks if a true partnership with Africa is to be realized. Fair prices for cash crops, relief from the overwhelming burden of international debt, access to technology, machinery, energy, investment in partnership.
I would like to suggest that if there was respect for the other people, if there was a sense of partnership at the end of the day, at the end of a program where aid has been given, that we have been through this together and now we are partners together, we can look back and be proud of the work we did together. Partnership.
Throughout the continent, in cities, towns, and villages, and on remote farms, Africans are working with their hands and with their hearts.
All that I have, I've made them with my hands. And with my hands, I hope to get more. My dreams, I know they will be all fulfilled.
Peter's voice is just one of many. Together they tell a new story. Africa is on the move. As we witness dramatic changes in places like Eastern Europe, Africa too is experiencing its own historic moment in time, its own revolution.
Africa, in my opinion, is undergoing a revolution. A revolution in outlook, a revolution in political organization, a revolution in economic restructuring, a revolution in social attitudes, and a revolution in technology. The speed at which change is occurring is so phenomenal that even the apartheid system is going to crumble within this decade. So I think the world should begin to know that Africa is no longer the so-called changeless society or changeless continent. It is a highly dynamic continent, and it has a lot to offer. Not only in this decade, but by the year 2000, a lot will have been very visible.
Uganda is going forward. This is a time to work for Uganda. This is a time to work for Uganda.
Africa's people have a vision. At each level of society, they are taking action to fulfill it. They have a new energy and a firm sense of purpose. Africans know that their inheritance is in their own hands. They are building a better life for themselves and for their children. They see a future of health and productivity for all Africans, a future in which Africa contributes to and enriches all of humanity.
Uganda is going forward. This is the time to work for Uganda. This is the time to work for Uganda. Fayusi machinani, tija kutabarusa, imama na baja, mukoro kelisobo, webarakwisha, mukoro, muanga yatekanirize. Nitumbanza kusima ruanga nyamu